This will be over and over. To lead by an any big fat love, find common ground to halt the spread of lies, and we must do it big fat love, find common ground to halt the spread of lies, and any
America first, America first,
non-fatal. We want to build a much better, believable people, and we must do it non-fatal. Communication very much higher.
America first.
To lead by an any
Insiders fighting for insiders.
time to stop.
Insiders fighting for insiders.
More of
Insiders fighting for insiders.
time to stop.
Insiders fighting for insiders. America first.
Love the flow. 69.
Now it's time for new
Believable
people.
and we must do it. If we don't control,
Insiders,
this will be over and over. To lead by an any big fat love, find common ground to halt the spread of lies, and we must do it big fat love, find common ground to halt the spread of lies, and any
America first. America first.
non-fatal. We want to build a much better, believable
People,
and we must do it non-fatal. Communication
very much higher. America first.
to lead by an any
Insiders fighting for insiders.
time to stop.
Insiders fighting for insiders.
More of
Insiders fighting for insiders.
time to stop.
Insiders fighting for insiders. America first.
Love the flow.
Are you making this magic?
Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go.
and the future never comes. What? And the future never comes. What comes is always here now. And because of your habit of worrying about the future, you will base that movement also for worrying. And because of your habit of worrying about the future, you will base that movement also for worrying. One now, another now, wherever you are, it will be here and now. One now, another now, only one moment at a time. And because of your habit of worrying about the future, you will base that movement also for worrying. And because of your habit of worrying about the future, you will base that movement also for worrying. One now, another now, wherever you are, it will be here and now. One now, another now, only one moment at a time. And the future never comes. What comes is always here now. You could have lived, but you only planned. And because of your habit of worrying about the future, you will base that movement also for worrying. And because of your habit of worrying about the future, you will base that movement also for worrying. One now, another now, wherever you are, it will be here and now. One now, another now, only one moment at a time. It is a series of nows. You could have lived, you could have lived. It is a series of nows. What comes is always here now. One now, another now, wherever you are, it will be here and now. One now, another now, only one moment at a time.
It ended.
Bears and horses and dogs and dogs and bears and horses and dogs.
Reach the wizard. Reach the wizard. Reach the wizard. Reach the wizard.
Watch this.
Oh, hallelujah.
Get up right now.
I'm hearing something real powerful for someone. And now listen to this.
Sent that man that
Reaching out to hurting people. This is what you do. Something more than it was. Yes. Listen to this right here. I heard then, it was like the Lord spoke that through me then.
Oh, there it is. Get up right now.
There it is again.
sent that man that
Reaching out to hurting people. This is what you do. Something more than it was.
I like that, don't you?
Get up right now.
There it is again, so strong.
Oh, yes.
Sent that man that
Reaching out to hurting people. This is what you do.
morning.
Of course, this rhythm is greatly slowed down.
Well, here it is.
Louder with Crowder Studios, protected exclusively by Walther.
And Betty.
You know, like fabric?
Wait, hold up.
Because I make love to her.
From California.
In the house we all were born, where we had to quarantine, all alone and unemployed, per demands from the CDC. So we chose to have some fun with the Mug Club quarantine, and we'll give it all away. For the month, all shows are free. We all live in a COVID quarantine, a COVID quarantine, a COVID quarantine. At least you'll have the Mug Club quarantine, the Mug Club quarantine, Mug Club quarantine. Now we all have extra masks, quarter black, pooped his pants. I should know they're unrelated. We all live in a COVID quarantine, a COVID quarantine, a COVID quarantine. At least you'll have the Mug Club quarantine.
LouderWithCrowder.com/MugClub to join $30 off by using the promo code QUARANTINE the entire month of April. All of the content is here on YouTube because we know you're going nuts. I'm the maestro, and by the way, I went to go see actually a symphony for Christmas this year.
Really?
I am 99% convinced that most of this is bullcrap.
It is.
That they're just looking at the page.
You think so?
I mean, is a guy like playing the wrong line? Oh, wait, he went like this.
It's all pacing, right, Bill?
Yeah. It's just keeping everyone on time.
Yeah, I know, but I don't believe it. Speaking of which, when we did a lovely intro from Smooth Manny.
Yeah, that was great.
Happy birthday, Smooth Manny, and to Pops Crowder.
Yeah,
happy birthday, April 2nd. Love you both, but I hate your country, the country of Colombia. Aside from coffee and Shakira, We have Tim
She's
Pool
Colombian?
on the show
We do.
today.
Nice.
And we'll be, I think he's a little bit of inside baseball on some of the bias going on with the COVID stuff on the YouTube. My half-Asian lawyer is here. How are you, sir?
Hey, glad to be here.
Bill Richmond, I should say. Oh, wait, hold on a second. Before I introduce Gerald, which one?
I don't even know anymore.
L.
Well, yeah, let's go with L.
L.
Still is the Mug Club Quarantine Month.
Yes.
Hashtag Mug Club Quarantine. Enter in the promo code quarantine at louderwithkreider.com/mugclub. You get $30 off. That's our biggest discount.
Huge.
Since the Vox Adpocalypse, we're not first responders, but we can create more content, so we're doing everything in front of the paywall. You can go to the schedule on the website to see all of the live streams that we're doing. And now Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the morning, we doubled the content for you. And I don't know what I was thinking.
Sounded like a good idea at the time.
I'm very tired. I was in the office yesterday, sitting like this, like Cameron. I'm dying. And Gibby came in. He said, "You look bad."
We shall up the daily caffeine injection.
You're not dying. You just can't think of anything fun to do. Take some Pepto-Bismol, be a man, and come pick me up. Quarter Black Garrett is here.
Hey, what's up? How's it
Hopefully you
going?
changed your pants. And Audio Wade. Too Cute Maddie is doing the overlay. She's back. She's feeling better. And she's so cute that I just threw up a little, but I swallowed it.
A little bit, yeah.
Gerald A. is here. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, sir. We have Donald Trump's Trump cab
Really?
today.
And that cures coronavirus, correct?
I hear
we can
it
make
does.
that claim
We
clinically,
can, yes.
and it's scientifically sound.
FDA approved.
Question of the day before we go on, and I ran this past Half Asian Bill beforehand. I was like, just so you know, we're going to kind of take a steaming crap on China. He was like, I get it. So,
approved.
What do you think is China's worst offense? By the way, we're not just talking. We're talking mainly about the Chinese government, but eating pets. Would that be up there? Dangerous viral experimentation? Lying about the pandemic? Or fentanyl? You let me know. But first, before we move on, we have a lot of news of the day. China actually, giving credit where it's due, they're finally stepping up their coronavirus efforts.
Magical.
And you know what?
So good.
Now we know where Governor Cuomo gets his ideas.
Yeah.
It makes look, yes. Was it a razor bump? Was it a barbell? Korean plungers.
Yeah. I liked it. That was nice. That was entertaining.
Okay.
You would.
Hey, I looked good in that video.
That's racist. We don't tolerate that on the show. By the way, before we get started, obviously you may be familiar with our motions graphics designer, Brendan.
Yeah.
We talked with him on Wednesday morning, because his family came into town to visit him all across the entire country.
It's good timing.
And so we've had to take precautions because there is a likelihood, as slim as it may be, that he came in contact with the coronavirus. So let's go down to our security camera. We've taken the proper precautions. Everyone there is working. And there you go. There is Brendan. Good. Okay. No, that's fine. Hey, Brendan, you got to put the mask on, buddy. You can't. I'm eating. I don't give a shit. Microbes don't know if you're eating. Put the mask on. It doesn't work if it's on your neck. For crying out loud.
Make the cone
It
bigger.
makes it very difficult.
He's putting us all at risk.
It makes it difficult when your employees are retarded.
That is difficult. That's true. That's very true statement. Yeah.
We'll check back in with him. We'll make sure he's okay, both physically and emotionally. It's not your birthday, Brendan. Shut up. Any other birthdays here? No? Okay.
I'm going to claim one.
All right. Hopefully he gets his check from the government. You knew this was coming, by the way. A Canadian movie now, the first. It's called Corona.
Oh, boy.
It's the first COVID-19 release. It explores the Chinese virus discrimination and the ripple effects therein, and it was shot last month in Vancouver.
It is.
We go now, I think we actually have an early look at the trailer.
Oh.
Me, Chinese. Me, tell Joe.
Good Lord.
Who's reffing now?
Me, put COVID in your coat.
You know,
Gosh, it's gonna
Lord
be good.
gets a lot of work.
True. Yeah, that's true. Too much.
I told you to switch to Bill when he's laughing.
That is the favorite thing I've ever seen. In the show, period.
That's awesome.
Just and
I love
it was short. It was sweet. Much like me.
We actually we're like, we could really use a woman's voice for Lord, and we asked Too Cute Maddie, and without explaining the entire context, she was very confused. What? I was like, never mind, we don't have time. Wait, do a Lord impression. Pitch it in Logitech. I don't care. Sorry, Logic Pro. What is it? I said Logitech Meg.
That's
camera. I don't
Cameras
care.
and stuff.
doesn't matter.
You should be grateful that we're here with you and not broadcasting from a Skype. If you want that, go to Samantha B.
Nobody wants that.
Promo code quarantine, $30 off. And if you are a Mug Club member, of course, please do renew. It's what keeps us afloat. By the way, gyms, they're mainly closed. My gym is closed. I think all of our gyms are closed.
Bill's is obviously.
We don't go to the gym. The coronavirus, though, it's not stopping Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg from working out. According to her personal trainer, though D.C. has been shut down, the justice, quote, ain't having it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that's her personal trainer. And, he's even been sharing her workouts on Instagram, which you can see here. She is...
Lively.
Incredible.
I want to buy what she's selling, which, coincidentally, is My Fit Tee.
Oh, great.
That's
amazing. I like those little sweatbands on the wrist. Those really
just in
make
case.
a difference.
It's more of a fashion statement when you no longer have sweat glands.
Yeah. It really it is just for the looks, the aesthetic.
It really is. It's like leg warmers. She doesn't have any legs.
No legs left.
True. So finally, in these trying times, by the way, everyone's been affected by this, and we're going to get on to China in a little bit. And then Tim Pool. I'm really looking forward to talking with Tim Pool because there's been some crap going on social media.
Yeah.
Everyone's been tested here, even celebrities a little bit, but some of them have been really helpful. For example, Nickelback, they've stepped up with a signed guitar, Nickelback guitar, for charity.
Generous.
Though I should be clear, Costco has made it clear they are limiting the guitar to one per customer. Don't take more than one. We all have to look out for each other.
Yeah,
we do
right now.
It's a difficult.
Can't be hoarding like that. That's wrong.
Also, I should mention on that same website, Creed singer Scott Stapp is selling one of his guitars as well.
He was enjoying
I'm just
that.
most amazed at the physics of that.
time.
Like how you get it and into the.
It's actually surprisringly really easy.
We were all we wrote backwards from how can we write a bit where we physically on Nickelback and Creed.
And then we looked
without being too on the nose.
Yeah. Right. Not just right on next to the nose.
Just next to the nose. You got a little something. What is it? Scott Stapp. Just you got it.
Sanitize your hands.
By the way, before we move on, we'll actually be including some. We only do live chats, by the way, with people who are Mug Club members on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Next Tuesday, Jean-Guy Tremblay will be live streaming with Dehi Denagla live. Tuesday night.
So much fun.
Nice.
Call of Duty. Which Call of Duty is Jean-Guy going to be streaming?
Warzone.
I don't know. But the point is, if you he just said it, I don't care. But if you want to chat with us, we don't use YouTube live chat because don't pay nothing, so you can chat through Mug Club. Before we move on, though, actually, I think one last time, let's check back in with our good friend, even Brendan. Brendan, how are you? Brendan, you've been working hard. I appreciate it. Go grab yourself a break, a cup of water. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I know it's tough. It's been tough for you. And then, no. 6 feet per the CDC. Man, he's right there, Brendan.
Oh.
It's his birthday, yeah.
Come on, man.
No, 6 feet, Brendan. Brendan, get yourself some water, but 6 feet. Yeah. Okay. Well, don't get mad at me, Brent. I don't make the rules.
A little pouty.
I just call them. Isn't that right?
Yeah,
Half Asian Bill?
that's true. You don't
I
make
have
the rules. You got to. Got to enforce them.
And I have to collect his check from the government.
Hey, I already said if you need to turn the power up on the shot collar,
I know.
we will.
You know what? And it's not fair. It's not fair.
It's for his own good.
Not fair for you to have to do that.
It's not fair for me to have to do that. Hey, Quarter Black, before we move on, let's bring up the tweets of the week here. I think we have some pictures of people. Look at that. All these folks who've been...
That's great.
Thank you so much for saying. Look at the blue eyes on that lady right there.
Wow.
You can't teach
Photogenic.
that blue eyes. My eyes are more of just like a listless taupe.
What did they have
It's
to
like
be
the
listless?
walls
Well,
of an abandoned hospital. Yeah.
Yours are more like a doll's eyes.
Yeah, the devil's eye. Sometimes she'll go away. Sometimes she'll don't go away. I don't know why you're watching. I know exactly why you're watching.
You have no choice.
I'm amazed as to how lazy these other late night hosts are.
Oh, yes.
And I get it. They can't. They have employees of they have 150 writers, so I understand
They
that. But
do,
still,
yeah.
they could get a snowball mic or a Yeti mic if they're going to be broadcasting from home.
Not hard.
Be helpful. A lav.
Let's get, and you're going to have a lot. I know actually Half Asian Bill has some context on this. Originally, this was titled...
Because he's Chinese.
What a piece of China, but we realized it didn't delineate enough between the Chinese government and the Chinese people, and we've tried to talk about that. That being said, there still are some issues that I have outside of the Chinese government to a degree. Not a lot, but let's talk about this right now. Everything wrong with China, and not just as a part of this pandemic right now.
Right.
But I think, if nothing else, this has sort of lifted the veil for a lot of people to realize, hey, as far as international trade goes, as far as the agreements, they're not necessarily our friends in every country. Doesn't mean they're necessarily enemies. I don't want to be you should be American, buy American. I mean, have you driven a Volt?
That's a good point.
I don't even know that they have.
Force that on
I don't even know that they have a AAA in Japan. You just call a guy and he shows up. Buy a Toyota. Okay. No, not a mechanic. Salesman. He's on my card. So, point is, now that I said that, we can dump on China. So listen,
Yes.
Donald Trump has been trying to sound the alarm, particularly as it relates to international trade on China, for quite some time.
I'd like to have you take a look at the fentanyl that's coming out of China and Mexico.
Major Chinese drug traffickers for and they have really put very, very strong clamps on them. They've indicted them when
Cuomo
they
said
charge
nipple clamps.
25% for a car to go in. And we charge 2% for their car to come into the United States. That's not good. We've taxed China on $300 billion worth of goods and products being sold into our country. He said he was going to stop fentanyl from coming into our country. It's all coming out of China.
Now, here's the thing. and I've talked about this. I don't like the idea of tariffs because it's a tax passed on to the consumer. However, there is a valid point when you do have countries, and it's no longer equitable. If they are taxing our goods going over, and this happened at one point, I believe, too, with Japan, and there aren't several Japans, maybe, right? I have no idea. That's just a band.
You never know.
We the Japans. No. That just sounds. It's a terrible. Are you just a cover band? Oh, Japanese bands are cover bands. But what Japan was doing with motorcycles, and unfortunately, we did it with Hondas that were coming in, and it was actually Ronald Reagan who did this. I understand it being equitable, but the flip side is a lot of Americans had to buy Harleys, and if I'm not mistaken, that was during the AMF days where they didn't work at all. So they just didn't have access to good motorcycles. But there does need to be a balance of making sure that we aren't competing with slave labor. And you still have relatives.
Yeah, so I've got some family who are in Hong Kong, and I actually had a cousin who was either born in the United States, worked extensively in China. And what's really interesting is just the different ways in which China has kind of spoken out of both sides of its mouth. Right. At one point, it'll say, "Oh, well, no, we're very pro the wet markets. Oh, no, now we're against them. We're shutting them all down." Right. But then at the same time, they're touting traditional medicine, which uses the animal products, the wildlife animals from the wet markets. And all the while, you have pockets of Chinese citizens and scientists who are saying, "Are you kidding me? Why can't we just shut these down and join the rest of the world?"
I want to move on to wet markets, but I meant more so with trade, right? Because as moral libertarians, we agree, listen, we shouldn't be just putting a tariff on to punish a country, but if they are punishing us, there really isn't a fair international trade agreement. And I think, and no one, by the way, but Bernie Sanders talked about this, the Clintons talked about this a long time ago. I know NAFTA, we can go into Bill Clinton, but if you listen to Hillary Clinton's rhetoric, but certainly Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump's the first person to do anything as it relates to trade. That's not what we're talking about today, but it has sort of fostered an environment with this festering pustule that has become the Chinese Communist government.
Yeah, and for everybody who is giving Donald Trump a hard time about the tariffs, I get it. But what do you do when you have a trading partner like that refuses to play by any rules, that's stealing people's IP as soon as they come into the country and doing whatever they want with it? Like, what do you do? If that's not the solution, okay, fine. What do you do? No administration before this has done a good job dealing with them.
Right.
None.
And
Trump is the only one to stand up.
And they have the purchasing power of 19 billion people.
That's true. They even undercount their people in the census. That's crazy.
Yeah, it absolutely is nuts. So going back to Bill's point, China this week, they reopened the wet markets that were allegedly the source of all this. And by the way, they're still selling bats, dogs, and cats. And I want to be clear, and I try to be really careful, by the way. I want to warn you, we're not showing anything graphic as far as videos, but to me it's still disturbing. It's really hard for me to do any of the animal stuff. So let me describe it for you and then tell you you're not going to see anything other than dogs in cages at the market. But I do think it's important to drive this home. To understand the sort of severity, I mean, okay. It's tough because I'm sitting here going like, I'm trying to make sure that the clip isn't that bad. They reinstated the wet markets.
Right.
Okay, wet markets, allegedly, from what we understand, created the virus. And now, while the rest of the world is still going through the pandemic, they reinstated them. To understand the severity of that, imagine the United States removing all the social distancing guidelines and then banning soap. That's how severe bringing back the wet markets can be. No hygiene standards. The cruelty, though, is it's over the top. Dogs are kept in cramped cages, and then, I'm not going to show it, but then they're boiled alive. I want to warn you, it's not graphic, but the following footage will make you angry. We had to cut it short because that's all we can show.
There was more.
Without you guys getting super pissed.
Yeah. Now, Bill, what does wet market mean? I don't mean to ask you specifically.
Well, it's interesting.
You do mean precisely to ask him.
I think you do, and you're asking the Asian half, so it'll be a good answer.
Yeah. So I'll get it accurate.
So what people have always understood the wet markets to be, and what they've always been described as, is the wet refers to the blood. People are going to be skinning the animals alive or butchering them live on the street in front of the customers, and like wet work, a military term, assassinations, that type of thing. It refers to the blood that's involved. But now, actually, people are trying to swing the other way to try to counter the racism of just the facts of the situation of how these wet markets exist. There was an LA Times article came out either today or yesterday that tried to say, well, it's not actually referring to the blood and the butchering, it's just referring to the fact that they hose the ground off and the ground is wet.
Okay.
Question.
Right. So the ground is now wet with the blood of the animals that were killed alive, because apparently that makes them more delicious.
Yes.
And by the way, and I know we talked, not all Chinese people support the idea of wet markets, but here's the thing. Sure. It's enough. There are enough people that this can happen in a public square. I mean, for example, if you show up with a MAGA hat here in the United States, Antifa's going to show up to punch you in the face. No one is there pulling a Jesus with a temple, just knocking crates over like, you're free. I want to see wet market Willard.
And by the way,
and this is important. One really important thing too. There are no civilized cultures, none outside of Asia that eat dogs. I want to be really clear about this, because I understand the eating cats thing, and not just because I don't like cats, but cats have not always been domesticated animals to the same degree that dogs have been. I understand when people now say, oh, pigs, why do you eat pigs? That's wrong, because a lot of people have pigs as pets. I can understand that cultural differences. Since the dawn of human civilization, dogs have been our eyes, our ears, and the senses that we do not have. We have always had an alliance. No other society outside of Asian societies eat dogs, except, and I did a lot of research on this, a couple of societies in like the Swiss Alps, and these are really, they're basically like tribes. It's basically Swiss redneck. They're basically the Swiss family Olsons. That's all they are. And this is an issue that is like, there is a cruelty to killing an animal that is innately affectionate toward humans.
Yeah, and then the way that they do it too. But lest you think that these wet markets exist in the countryside, because you think, oh, it's got to be removed. No, the Wuhan area where these wet markets, it's a 15 million person city center. It's like putting it in downtown New York, right? It's around everybody that's packed together. So it's not like an isolated thing out in the country you can go to.
No, and just so you know the numbers, I mean, it's tens of thousands of markets, wet markets. I mean, at its peak, before they started shutting them all down, which was not long ago, months ago, we're talking about, there were tens of thousands of these markets. And even in, not just in the quote-unquote rural provinces, which is a good point, Gerald. I mean, these are multiple million person cities. But even in Shanghai or Beijing or in the suburbs around those towns, they have those wet markets. And, it's not just the idea of a butcher, right? Like, we have butchers here, and maybe they do live butchering, but it's the proximity of wild animals all together, combined with the hygiene and the mixing that creates the huge problem that we have here.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Tens of thousands. It's not like a Michael Vick dog fighting ring where you hear about it in the United States and everyone is horrified and the guy basically loses his pass to society.
Right.
People walk by a dog being boiled alive there and go, oh, that seems about right.
Yeah. It's Tuesday.
This is something important. This has been a threat globally that has been talked about for a while, but not in mainstream media because Russia, so we can't talk about it. There's only so much airtime we have to know about Cuomo's nipple rings and his brother's Alfredo recipe.
Please.
So let's go through a few points here that I think matter in relation to China. And Half Asian Bill, you can half correct me wherever I'm wrong.
But only half.
The wet markets, they're not only where coronavirus started, also SARS.
Yeah.
Let's be clear about that. And those are just the diseases that originated specifically in the wet market. So not all, but many different strains of bird flu, swine flu, they spread in these markets. They weren't created necessarily in these markets, but this is where they spread, and they led to repeated outbreak. And I know what people are going to say, and I've read this. I don't know where I read this, but they say, well, just because these diseases started there, just like in the United States started Lyme disease. Well, there's a big difference between a disease started in a cruel market with a dog boiled alive from a cage and a tick bite that fell from an oak tree. We really want to compare this? Sure, that's on us. Sorry about the Ozarks and the Lyme disease, okay?
I mean, there's a clear difference between something that occurs in nature and something that is repeatedly, year after year, decade after decade, allowed to happen, not just through inaction, but through actually touting these policies that encourage the kind of conditions in which not just one SARS came out, but the current corona is a version of SARS. It's not like this hasn't happened before, and the Chinese government has before stepped in and immediately said, we're shutting it all down.
That's the most important thing to me, right? And we have this as an overlay. And they've shut down these markets they shut them down during the SARS outbreak, during the H7N9, which I don't necessarily remember. It was that's right. That's a bird flu.
We knew about bird flu.
That's right. We knew about bird flu. That was a pandemic, I heard.
It was.
And now coronavirus. So what's most important to me is they shut them down, right? So this disease spreads. They shut down the wet markets like right away. Everyone shut down wet market. Okay? And then they reopen them. So they know that it's happening there. And right now it's extra dickish because the pandemic is still spreading across the globe and they are already reopening them. Like, can't you wait until the bodies have assumed room temperature in Italy and Spain and the United States before you reopen what you knowingly had created as an incubator to create the proliferation of this disease? That's what bothers me. There is no, and ignorance isn't a defense. You told me about that before when I was like, I don't know. It's not my
But they do know.
Drugs.
They don't even get that argument.
No, they don't get that argument. They knew. And I will say this, not all cultures are created equal, okay? I believe that the American culture is better than the culture that has live wet markets. As a general rule, or certainly that component of our culture.
Yeah. Look, and if you say, and there's been another article, Bill, came out that I read that said that this is part of Chinese culture and we need to make sure that we don't get rid of it completely because of livelihoods and everything else. And I'm like, okay, well, I can understand the argument to a degree, but let's at least say if you're going to have this kind of a market, I disagrey with some of the animals that you have there, right? I'll never agree with that. But the other stuff, at least
what do you disagree with those animals on?
I disagree with them having them there.
I'm like, well, I don't know if I necessarily believe in quantum physics or that every way the world could be.
I'm a multiverse kind of person.
I heard Gerald say he was a vegan.
I disagree with a lot of animals.
Really? You're
no,
gay?
I'm not at all. Okay. So you have to have regulation there because they tested. So the problem was with the washing. They would put these animals into these baths. It's almost like this communal bath to clean them off, and they tested the water, and they just kept reusing it and reusing it and reusing it. That's where all the viruses are.
All right, we get
every single
Let's
one.
Let's move on from the wet markets. It's gross.
Terrible.
Point made, I think. And you know what? Don't worry, you'll get that done.
Damn
next
those
time.
animals.
He's a clever little bastard. So let's go down to some other dangerous things that have been going. The research. Okay, so if the wet markets weren't bad enough, Chinese government, they've been conducting all kinds of viral research.
Oh, yeah.
Right, they isolated and worked with over 2,000. I want to make sure, over 2,000 new viruses, including bat coronaviruses, just 3 miles from the Wuhan market. And you were saying actually some of them are 1.2 kilometers.
It was 1.2 kilometers away. Washington Times put up there that it was 3, but I actually just Google Earthed it. But the Chinese government or somebody removed from Google the listing of where that
That's interesting. I would like to know why there's that discrepancy. I wonder if it's the way of the bird.
No. So 1.2 kilometers walking.
Really?
Walking. You can look it up right now.
Well, I don't want to look it up right now.
I'm just saying, like, the people at home can look it up.
I'll trust you over Washington Times.
You should definitely do that.
But to give you an idea, when people say they're researching viruses, deadly viruses, call it 3 miles to be generous.
Yeah.
If it's 1.2 kilometers, that's about half a mile.
That's close.
That's
That'd be
crazy.
like growing organic turnips next to Area 51.
Yeah, that's not a good idea.
It's not a good idea, no
That's how
matter.
you get alien turnips.
And this isn't a race thing, it's a bad idea thing.
Yeah.
Don't study deadly viruses next to where people eat live things.
Yes. Oh, and by the way, there's a hospital right across the street from this place as well.
Really?
So there was actually a paper by South China
Trifecta.
Technical Institute that came out. It's been out for a couple of months. Just got recently updated. They
You
are
suggest
saying
that like I would know it. Like, oh yeah,
Well,
it's
you
the
should.
South China Technical
yes,
Times.
Technical Times. Yeah, the University.
You're
Well,
familiar with them, Bill?
Here's
like
here's
I'm
the
reading it with
reason.
my pipe and slippers on Sunday. Let me see.
Wait, is anyone else getting the feeling that Gerald like stalks the Wuhan Instagram page?
I'm telling you, man.
And
I'm
is
all
like,
over this right now.
did that guy tag you,
Yeah.
Wuhan?
I hope he's using our sponsor ExpressVPN because something tells me you would find a hard drive full of Chinese pornography.
No, you definitely won't.
Hey,
Well-
my Chinese government contact said that you're on some list over there.
Well, I should be by now. But what they're saying is that they actually don't think that there is any evidence that it came from the market, meaning originated there. They're saying that the only evidence they have is tissue samples that were being worked on at this Center for Disease Control in China. This is not a conspiracy theory. They're saying that the closest habitat for these bats is over 900 kilometers away, the bats that they say caused it, and were not being sold at the market at the time.
But they're selling
That's the only
bats now,
information that we
so I don't
have.
know that I buy that.
No,
Yeah,
that
where's this
particular
information
that particular
coming
bat.
from?
Yeah, I don't know.
From these scientists.
It's coming from an inside source, by the way.
South China.
He has some colloidal silver, which will kill the strain directly in its track.
No. I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying it's 100%.
Can you said you thought that maybe it came from the lab.
Look, I think that there's a substantial
possibility.
chance that the lab was
That's all I'm
involved
saying.
in one
What a
in one
coincidence.
capacity or another. But I will say
It may
this.
not be nefarious, so it may have been an accident.
Yes.
You
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there's some kind of like intentional release or
Right,
even
right.
like intentionally creating biological weapons or anything like that. But
When you say it out loud like that, it actually doesn't sound so far-fetched.
maybe-
You would never hear me say that China did that.
If,
Maybe that's me
if the
hoping.
binding shoe fits.
I mean, so like I said earlier, the issue is it's bringing all these things together. So if you're bringing animals with different, all animals have diseases, and time and time again, a lot of these very pandemic-inducing diseases come from frankly, an unholy combination or proximity of unhygienic animals and people and butchering processes or even other types of things like that.
Right.
And when you put them all together frequently, it's not, doesn't mean today it's going to be bad or tomorrow's going to be bad or next month, but you've increased the chances that something is going to spread animal to animal.
Let me also
because
say,
that's how it goes.
Let me say something else too. This is important. We're not just pointing out cruelty because we don't like it. No, cruelty actually does have a dramatic effect on the health of these animals and the immune system. Like people want to talk about factory farming in the United States. That's why they have to inject it with all kinds of antibiotics because they're close proximity. Your dog is filthy enough. They lick their crotch and then try and lick your face. Like I get it. And kind of when it's your own dog, most people are fine with it. I understand. But that's not what's happening with these dogs. When you put them in a cage and they're basically being abused their entire lives, they are going to be more fertile carriers for disease. And to give you, just so you know, this isn't necessarily, and I think everything that you've all said here is reasonable. And now I'm starting to think, yeah, biological warfare. But I would never claim that. But in 2013,
we wouldn't say
Chinese researchers, they created a mutated strain of the bird flu in their attempts to make, this is quote, attempts to make strains in a lab that would, if accidentally released or used for nefarious purposes, pose a potentially global health threat. Now, I'm saying they were just saying that's a possibility. They weren't like playing it coy like, oh, whoopsie, gate go up, bird flu for you.
Yeah.
They were just saying that, hey, if this were to happen, it would be really bad.
Yeah.
And they were acknowledging that we're doing all of these things that hopefully this, like, have you seen Jurassic Park 1 through 5?
This never works out well.
I've only seen Jurassic Park 7.
Really?
Yeah, it's amazing. It just takes place
that was
entirely in a Walmart.
Oh, I thought that was the exclusive Chinese release.
Oh, yeah.
Where
It's a
just,
Walmart in China.
Jeff Goldblum saying, Rife finds a way. By the way, hit the notification bell if you are not subscribed or not joining Mug Club despite Mug Club Quarantine Month. Hit all notifications.
Yeah.
And, of course, subscribe to Credit Bits. We have new videos that go up every night at 9 p.m. Eastern anyway here on YouTube. So there's always a clip on YouTube. You just don't get the full show. Here's another thing that I think is pretty important when we're talking about China. And because the media is not doing it, they're carrying their water. I'll tell you why. I think the media are communist sympathizers. I'm not going to walk that back at all right now.
No.
But I'll circle back to that because unless you shut it off, I just did advertise colloidal silver and say that they were commies. Let's get to the masks, the test kits, the equipment, right? Here's the thing. They've not been honest. We now know this when it comes to medical testing. right, with the coronavirus. Now, everyone is acknowledging that. We were throttled on YouTube for saying you cannot trust the numbers coming out of China right now. We didn't say that they are flat out wrong, but you can't trust them yet. And of course, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, they decided to redirect all of these kinds of statements to more authoritative sources, some of which were directly from the Chinese Communist government. We'll come back to that. By the way, Donald Trump said, we're not taking the masks. Everyone gave him crap for it. The Netherlands, they had to recall 600,000 faulty masks from China. The latest test kits from Spain, they only work 30% of the time. Same for the kits, Turkey. Yeah, country after they are scrambling to try and dump some of these bad Chinese products that are destroying the chances of taking the coronavirus out, or at least containing it. Here, think about this for a second. Take all of the numbers from these countries, and then add potentially 30%.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the infection rates. We're the only country that doesn't have that right now. We have more accurate testing right now.
Yeah.
And now we're doing more and more testing by the day. The fact, I was shocked. I had to double check this and have read your research. A 30% failure rate? You might not even take that test.
That's insane.
Would you use a condom with a 30% failure rate?
Yeah, that's a high
It only worked
margin.
30% of the time. That's what he's saying. So it's a 70% failure rate is what they had.
Oh, they only work.
It's the other way. They only work 30% of the time.
The problem is I'm so anti-Chinese I can't do math.
Well, no, that would be bad enough. If it had a 30% failure rate, we'd be up in arms. It was 70% failure rate.
70%.
Wow.
And the Chinese government in Spain, basically, the embassy said, well, they weren't licensed to make the product, so our bad.
Yeah.
That was their defense of the entire thing.
Also, the baby food, asbestos. Might want to avoid that for a while. The Best By date, not really relevant. It's all bad. They do have a history, by the way, of sometimes China exporting goods that I was making a joke about, that poisonous toothpaste, that toxic children's toys, unsafe tires, all of which had to be recalled. Now, I want to be really clear. Not all Chinese goods are bad, and not all American goods are good. So, and by the way, if there's an American manufacturer out there who can actually create a quality mug for us, we would love to work with you. It just has to be at a reasonable rate and decent quality. At that time, we could only find American Union-made mugs, and it was more expensive. So we said we'll bring it in from a company that chemically tests their products. And now we have Americans who are etching it and painting it, so it created more jobs. But if there is an American manufacturer who can make this kind of a mug, we would love to partner with you.
Yeah.
And if you want a big old fat contract amidst this pandemic, there are a lot of new mug clubs sign up. So
Give us a call.
thank all of you. Are you about to say something there?
No, you're good. Keep going. Keep rolling, man.
And that's one thing too. Again, made in the USA sometimes can also mean crap.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about that with Harley Davidson. You're not a huge fan of Harley Davidson. You say there's great products from other countries. In this case, China just keeps sending us crap kind of repeatedly.
Yes. I don't believe that all American products are the best, especially when you compare, for example, American cars with Japanese cars. And you look at the costs that go in for LASIK and dental and unions per retiree. We need to be clear about that. But it's also very difficult to make the argument that Americans can compete effectively with a country that employs slave labor when you look at it. And again, that's a problem with the Chinese government. The problem right here is not with some products being faulty, because you could have the same thing in any other country. The problem was with the Chinese government recognizing that and sending them out internationally anyway.
Yeah, and we're not taking a dump on American products when we say that they're substandard. We want them to be
some
good.
Are.
No, some.
Because I don't want everyone out there to say, hey, made in China means crap.
No,
sometimes
not necessarily.
It's not true.
But in American products, we want you to make great stuff so that it can compete with the rest of the world.
Right.
So when we hold your feet to the fire, that's why.
What do you think when you see made in USA or made in China, Bill?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's a global economy.
It is.
Things are made in China. They're good. Some are not good. Same in the U.S. I mean, it's a different. It's apples and oranges when you compare the economy here and all the things. I mean, there are a number of people who want to hate on America and say, that there are so many bad things that are happening. But when you think about why we have to charge more, why we have certain standards of living that are much better, and we're not the source of global pandemics. I mean, I get it. There's a different balance. There's a number of people in China who are allowing this to continue to happen, and a lot of those people are government. They want to keep they want to keep the pristine view that they think they have about how they're treating their people, and to continue to have a global economy be the engine that's sending a lot of products around the world. But it's going to take the Chinese people to say, we got to do something different.
I pray to God, and I mean it, that we see an armed insurrection from the Chinese people against those commie bastards at some point in our lifetime.
They got to overthrow them eventually.
Are you encouraging violence? For the people who are being held hostage, or the people who all of a sudden disappeared, whistleblowers, right? Several doctors now. Yeah. One tried to blow the whistle on the masks. She's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think some people need to defend themselves right now. I think people need to rise up, and hopefully the international community, rather than being paralyzed by political correctness, will say, you know what? These people, not the government, these people deserve the same rights that we have in France, in Spain, in Italy, in the United States. So you know what, Chinese government, because we sympathize with your people, off. How about that? At some point,
I would like to hear
we need to do that. I'd love to hear that press conference. Here's another point. Fentanyl. Is it fentanyl or fentanyl?
Fentanyl.
I have no idea. Well, then,
both.
Okay, because
I'll ask my wife.
I thought it was what the president said, fentanyl, and I was like, oh, he's the president. I must be wrong. Then I realized, not exactly. So,
Yeah, don't use that as a gauge.
the rate of fentanyl-related deaths has been doubling every year. Now almost 20,000 dying each year. Main destination for fentanyl, the United States. Main source of fentanyl, China. Now I know what you're thinking, and this is a valid point. You have Americans who make meth or synthesize opioids. That's absolutely true. But those people are not creating drugs that are effectively sanctioned or actually subsidized by the government and given tax breaks on exports, as you see in China. No, that actually happens. For context, just imagine Joe Exotic receiving a federal grant for a gay meth tattoo parlor tiger den. That's what's happening.
Season 2.
It's not that they're the only country with drugs. That's not my issue.
Yeah.
It's the government actually subsidizing and giving tax breaks on fentanyl as an export.
Oh my gosh. Is fentanyl, so what do people use fentanyl for? Do they just to get high?
Oh
Is
my
that,
God.
I'm serious, I don't know.
Frickin' moron.
I don't know. I'm asking a question.
No,
Wow,
I know.
I never realized.
Gerald is this innocent. Fentanyl is a crazy painkiller.
Okay, and I knew it was
But here's how dangerous
but
it
are they
is.
just overtaking it?
Well, it's so dangerous that if you put like a grain of it in heroin, the longtime heroin user dies.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
It's that potent.
Okay.
It's
All right.
crazy. It's not like
Was this what Michael
it's
Jackson
not like
did?
I overdid it. It's like I inhaled a grain of and you're dead right away.
Yeah, it's like one grain in like 90 cases of wine would still kill you.
Dang it!
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah, it's really bad.
I knew it was a painkiller. I just didn't know how people were using it.
And you know what? I will say, though, we do have to get going pretty soon. Fortunately, President Trump, on all of these points, but particularly fentanyl, as he pronounced it, he's been pretty consistent, and I wish that more people listened on all of these points.
They tax our goods going into China. It's a totally unfair deal. We've taxed China on $300 billion worth of goods and products being sold into our country. The Chinese virus, it comes from China.
Yeah. Were we about to say that,
That's
Joe?
pretty clear. I think he has taken so much crap for calling China out, but somebody had to. Somebody finally had to stand up and say, look, this isn't fair. You're not dealing with the rest of the world in a fair way, and you have to be dealt with. And I don't know why people can't see how obvious that is.
Can I call it right now?
Yeah.
The first wave that we're seeing in the last couple of days of people, mainstream media saying, we're going to question the China numbers. Oh, maybe we should not necessarily believe the facts that are coming from this communist government. In 3 months from now, every one of them is going to forget that they said, oh, we shouldn't have been hard on China, and all of them are going to come back to those facts and say, oh, that's right, China was bad. But they will conveniently forget that during this period, they said, let's keep listening.
I think they're communist sympathizers. I'm not saying that the media are communist, but I will not walk this back at all. Think about it for a second. Why were Washington Post, New York Times, Vox all saying the flu is something you should worry? The coronavirus is not an issue. Don't worry about it. Now they try and act like it's a left-right thing. No.
Yeah.
You guys said not to worry about it because at that point you were parroting the World Health Organization talking points, who, by the way, were parroting the Chinese government talking points. Then all of a sudden, when it was blamed on the United States that we weren't ready because we were trusting information from China, and a Chinese foreign minister, who, by the way, was not throttled or censored by Twitter at all, but Laura Ingraham was for saying that the masks were faulty, which is true. Actually, no, she was censored because of the chloroquine thing. I think I was censored for saying the masks were faulty. It's all so the issue, what was I saying before that? What was I talking about before that? Oh, yeah. So
the foreign minister.
Again, the Occam's razor here. Why would they say it's not a big deal? And then all of a sudden say it's a big deal and the right is wrong about it. For the same reason that they don't seem to have a problem with doctors and whistleblowers disappearing in China, and they refuse to run the press briefings here in the United States from the White House. Here's a new rule. While we're talking about freedom of the press, you know what? It's not exactly communist China here if CNN refuses to run the press briefing and instead runs commentary on the press briefing, that you don't get a seat or a press badge. How about that? How about once you stop parroting communist Chinese talking points, then maybe you get a seat at that table. It is remarkable to me that I can't think of any other time in American history, but Orange Man bad, that we have a president, commander-in-chief, who's going out there addressing the people directly, The President of the United States and the media is opting not to run it. Instead, running false propaganda that maybe they're not getting from the Chinese government, but it certainly would be congruent with the messages that the Chinese government is trying to put out there right now. When you look at reporters retweeting the foreign minister with conspiracy theories, for some reason they're still on there, but Alex Jones is not. This is the president of the, and something else that's remarkable, they go, oh, potentially 100,000 to 220,000 deaths from coronavirus. Yeah. You know where you got those numbers? From Donald Trump's press briefing, dummy. But you didn't run it because you didn't want to include that we're getting hundreds of thousands of new masks. We're getting hundreds of thousands of masks that can be sanitized. The FDA approved the therapeutics that Donald Trump touted and you said he was wrong and crazy about. So what do? They don't run the press briefing. Instead, they run commentary on the press briefing while the Cuomos talk about their mom's pasta sauce and nipple rings. And then they take the worst numbers from the press briefings and don't actually tell Americans about the positives. Listen, not all cultures are created equal. And Donald Trump is right about this, just like Bernie Sanders was right about this. Americans should not have to compete with the child at a Nike factory who's working for $1.50 a day. This is not, we can't beat an international economy if it's not fair. And you know what? When we're talking about this, not all cultures are created equal because I think that American exceptionalism is a good thing. And you know, if you boil dogs alive and you pay children $1.25 or $3.25 a day, guess what? You don't get a seat at the international bargaining table. And not just China, because not all cultures are equal. If you don't let your women drive, you don't get to sit and dictate any policy or even express your opinion here in the United States. If you allow women to be beaten or they require 4 witnesses for rape, you, we don't need to listen to you. We're not going to be in any committee or international agreement that you take part in. So let's start with China and then work our way down so that hopefully we can be the empire we've been accused of being and make the rest of the world the United States of America. Why? Because the Chinese and everyone else would be better off. How about that? Tim Pool. I think I stubbed a toe on my desk. Are these shoes Chinese?
1, 2, 2. P.
It's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all.
Okay, you need to understand the plots, you need to understand the story point, and you really need to understand the gags, We're here.
Did you enjoy tonight's Open? Of course you did. You can thank the hundreds of underage Chinese children animators who've been working around the clock solely for your amusement.
それを見た日本人もやっぱり外人に負けちゃいけないなと。だから我々がターゲットに
Help keep our Chinese animation sweatshop open by joining Mug Club during Mug Club Quarantine Month. Go to louderwithcrowder.com/Mug Club and use the promo code QUARANTINE to get $30 off.
Aquí en las montañas colombianas, después de un día largo de trabajo, nada es más rico que una taza de café de Black Rifle Coffee. Y un vape. Sí, me gusta.
Go to blackriflecoffee.com/Crowder. Use promo code Crowder for 20% off your first purchase.
Doesn't matter. Desecrated Dan Fogelberg's song. Quarter Black Garrett.
Hello.
Fat, drunk, and quarter black. There's no way to go through life. And Mr. Crowder. The reason we had to rewrite community guidelines in the first place. Tell the half-Asian, the blind guy, exactly what I'm about to tell. What was that? You're out. Finished. Deplatform. I want you off this show. Well, with it.
Watch this and more at our other channel, Crowder Bits.
It's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Come cheer up my nights, come cheer up my nights. It's better to have loved and lost.
That was a little bit of my, was it Dick Van Dyke, the Love to Laugh? Or was it the other guy?
That was Dick Van Dyke.
Was it the
he was involved in the song.
Yeah. right?
Yeah.
I
He was
remember that.
along with the song.
From
He was
Mary
also the
Poppins.
other guy.
I don't know if that's the kind of thing back then. Were they laughing in theaters at that?
That's a good question.
Like when people say,
yeah.
it was a different time.
Yeah.
Was it? Did people see him go, I love to laugh? I'm just like, oh, that Dick Van Dyke, he really slays
It was
me.
a simpler time.
No. Do you mean stupider
was.
time? I don't think people were stupid.
I mean simpler.
They did storm the beaches of Normandy. I think
is
they
true.
probably had a... And they also, by the way, loved Some Like It Hot, which is still funny.
Right, yeah.
That's true.
So I don't know. I'm just frustrated. I'm at this point now in the week where I really appreciate it, Mug Club Quarantine Month, but I'm frustrated. I'm tired. I'm going... What was I thinking? Doing 2 shows a day. No. But I'm very glad. There's a sliver of... No, I'm very grateful. But there's a light at the end of the tunnel here for today as we kind of go into the home stretch.
Yeah.
He, of course, you know him. You love him. His YouTube channels. He has Timcast and Timcast News. And you can follow him at... There's both. Isn't there
There's both.
Timcast and Timcast News?
There's both.
You were going to correct me. That's rude.
No, I was just-
And he's on the
No, it's
Twitter
good.
while it's still
He's
allowable
everywhere.
at Timcast. Mr. Poole, how are you, sir?
Pretty good, all things considered.
What does that mean, all things considered? You don't have AIDS, do you?
Oh, no.
No, but we're told not to go outside. We're told not to go to the store. We're told that the world's basically ending and the economy must be destroyed because of this virus wiping out everything. I work from home, so I don't know. Not much has changed for me other than we have less chicken in the freezer, I guess.
Right.
We're eating more beans.
Well, I don't know. You're half Asian, right?
Quarter Asian, actually.
Quarter
what's up, bro?
Asian.
Yeah.
They eat a lot of. They have like a red bean ice cream in some
Yep.
of those Asian countries, right? So is that what you mean?
yeah.
You eat a lot of ice cream?
No, well, yeah, actually, a little bit of ice cream. No, we went to the store and we got beans. The bean market is a booming. I don't know if you heard it. Seriously, they're bullish on bean stocks.
Really?
Wow.
That's the apocalypse food, I guess.
I
Beans are
thought that
booming.
beans were going bare. I thought it was a
not.
bear
It's going the
market
other way.
for beans. Hey, real quick before we
Maybe.
move on, you have a new show, right? Every weeknight at 8 p.m. What is it?
Yeah. So youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Me and my buddy Adam do. It was supposed to be a general interest show. Like we talked about movies. We were talking about the new Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
Okay.
And then the apocalypse happened, and now there's no news
Right.
other than coronavirus. And we're sitting here like, dude, I feel you when you were saying you're tired or whatever, however you phrase it. I'm getting so sick of every front page story is COVID.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, give me a Brad Pitt's shirtless, celebrity
Well, that's
gossip story, man.
Are you sure you don't have AIDS a little bit? That's the first place you would go.
Well, no. It's actually a joke from the show because there was one story on the Daily Mail out of all the coronavirus. There was one tiny story, and it was like Brad Pitt took his shirt off, and for some, they decided to run with it. And I'm like, I'll take whatever I can get.
No. I understand. I'm with you. I still, Brad Pitt is still responsible for these. I have this scar tissue on my knuckle.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Because that shot in Legends of the Fall when he comes over the hill on horseback.
Yeah.
All the time. So I just get, Brad Pitt owes me some connective
gotta give it
tissue
to
repair.
him.
And I agree with
Yeah.
you on this. I want to move on to some specifics. The problem is the news media, of course, is all corona all the time.
Yeah.
And then so much of it needs to be corrected that a silly late night show like this and now morning show has to spend time on it. Because we watch CNN for an hour, not one mention of private industry stepping up and making masks. Not one mention of them being able to sanitize masks. Not one mention of the FDA
Well,
approved.
actually, no. I'm sorry, Stephen. You're wrong. They did take time out of their day to insult Mike Lindell for switching his pillow production to masks, and I can't say I'm surprised.
Yeah.
I think it was Jim Acosta called him the pillow guy and derided him for. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah, it upsets me because that's primarily my job. I'm supposed to make fun of the pillow rapist guy who put some packing peanuts in a tarp and thrust it upon the American public because Lori Grenier from Shark Tank likes to use Bed Bath & Beyond to sell cheap crap. But I appreciate that, gosh, this guy retooled 75% of his factories. Not only is that nationally relevant, but isn't it the job of the media and certainly our leaders to not only be truthful, but to try and find the positive amidst a pandemic? Don't they bear some responsibility?
Yeah. I'm always a little self-critical too because I feel like a lot of what I do and a lot of other, I guess media critics we're decently negative too, but it's a reaction to the media just misleading and misrepresenting and constantly trying to make us feel like trash. So I feel like, to a certain degree I deserve some blame because then I throw the pies right back. But I don't know what else you do. Like, I'm not going to sit here and let them just lie and misrepresent what's going on. And that's what they do all day. It's absurd.
Well, that's been happening. And I know you've talked about it in your recent video. You know, they talk about President Trump and Fox News downplaying the coronavirus as though that's a conservative thing. Now, I know you're not a conservative, though unfortunately you've been labeled one because you have the gall to appear on this show. You probably have some insight into that. It wasn't just conservatives. That was all of mainstream media up until March, downplaying coronavirus.
You know that Media Matters ran a smear on Fox News on I believe it was January 28th, saying that they were fear-mongering about, the coronavirus in China. So you had Greg Gutfeld, you had Tucker Carlson. They were raising the red flags very early on, and the media was trashing them for it. My favorite story to go to is Washington Post, February 4th. Get a grip, America. The flu is a way bigger threat than coronavirus. Right. And there's a meme going around of all of these stories from all these mainstream media companies where they were saying the flu is worse. BuzzFeed, I believe this was on January 28th. They said, don't fear the coronavirus, the flu is worse. And these tweets and these posts are all still up.
Yeah.
Yet now they're going to Fox News saying, aha, Hannity and was downplaying this, and it's like, so were you.
Right.
My favorite argument is you see all these pundits coming out attacking Trump for his slow response, and okay, maybe Trump did have a slow response and did a bad job. I think Trump was a little slow on this one, but guess what? The Democrats didn't do anything.
No,
so
they criticized him for being racist when he instituted the travel ban.
Exactly, and they were focused on impeachment.
Yes.
So if your argument that Trump was going too slow, and that means he's not, he's doing a terrible job, it's like, okay, fine, I accept that. That means you did a worse job because you were literally doing nothing but try to impeach the guy while he was actually, putting the task force together.
Think about this for a second. We've talked about this quite a bit, but let's draw a hypothetical scenario. Can you imagine how the media would have reacted during this impeachment trial if Donald Trump said, okay, you know what? We are going to institute a stay in place. We're going to put a travel ban, and we're going to invoke the Defense Production Act. Wow, because this was going on through February 3rd was Adam Schiff giving his testimony. Yep. Can you imagine how they would have reacted had he done it at that point? There are finite resources here, guys. We can't do all of it.
I'll give you the headline. The opinion piece from the New York Times, Trump's desperate attempt to distract from his, impending impeachment conviction.
Right.
Donald Trump earlier today tried to claim there was a real threat to the American health in a desperate bid to distract the American public once again, blah, blah, blah.
Right. Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And I wonder how much of it is this now where they're trying to say that it's a conservative problem and downplaying it just because they want to sort of move on from the impeachment trial and them downplaying it for so long, so they want to put it at his feet.
This was a story that I was just commenting on. I was just reading it. This guy from Media Matters accused Greg Gutfeld of he said Fox News downplayed this. Greg responded, and the guy called him a liar. And now there's a video clip from the 28th of Greg saying our administration isn't doing a good enough job on this. China's locking everything down.
Right.
And I'm like, did you read the story about how Tucker Carlson went down to Florida to meet with Trump to tell him this was a serious issue on the beginning of February or whatever?
Right.
It's like. I think everybody was a bit slow on this one for sure. Even I initially on the 23rd of January said I didn't think it was going to be a big deal, and I was wrong. And then I started to change my tune when more information came out. But I think it's fair to point out everybody was slow on this. And at a time when BuzzFeed, Washington Post, and everybody had said it was no big deal, at the very least, Trump, Fox News and these personalities are talking about it. Trump did put together a travel restriction. I mean,
well, I would put a finer point on it, not to disagree with you. I would say that everybody was proactively slowed down by the agents that be in government at the CDC and World Health Organization because they said this wasn't something to worry about. They said it was contained in China. The CDC said, no, private industry, you can't step up with the tests. And now we have a 2-minute at-home test. And the FDA is still stopping them from reducing 160,000 a day, capping it at 100,000. So private industry could have moved quickly. They were stopped proactively by the bureaucracy we see in the government.
I say? I agree with you, and then I say, but you know what? I'll still give 90% of the blame to China or more. They lied, they downplayed this, they withheld information, and the World Health Organization was just ponying up and pushing their propaganda. Like that video of the doctor shutting the Skype off when they gets asked about Taiwan it's despicable.
Gosh, that was.
Can you explain for people who don't know, since you're a quarter Asian, my lawyers talked about this, for people who don't understand the sort of rivalry, I guess you would say, the history between Taiwan and China. I mean, it makes Argentina-Brazil soccer pale in comparison. So the fact that it's one of two things. The World Health Organization is either so tone deaf they have no idea as to what it is you're about to educate us on with Taiwan and China, or they proactively tried to hold Taiwan away from the talks and conversation?
Well, I can't give you the full history. I'm not, the Taiwanese scholar or anything, but essentially Taiwan.
You're a quarter Asian. You should know something. You eat red bean ice cream. Give me something, Tim. I'm tired.
Taiwan views themselves as independent from China.
Right.
China does not agree. There's been a major international conflict. So when a Hong Kong reporter asked the doctor from the World Health Organization, how does he view, Taiwanese membership into the World Health Organization, he just ignores her entirely.
Yeah.
This is completely towing the line for China. Most people in the U.S. respect Taiwan, or I assume Taiwan's independence. We call them Taiwan, not China.
Right.
And people in Hong Kong recognize this as well. So it's similar to like the South China Sea.
Yeah.
If you are a pro-China shill, you'll be like, that's China, and you'll put it in your movies, and you'll do what they do. Right. The NBA players. Mm-hmm. And if you're not pro-China and oppose the horrifying the things they do to the Uyghur Muslims in the camps, and the repression in Hong Kong, you'll easily point out the people of Taiwan want nothing to do with them.
Right.
So, the World Health Organization is towing the line. It would seem. So how can we trust them?
Exactly. And the silver lining is here when you look at the Young Turks and you look at all of these leftists. And I know that you're more left on the idea of some sort of socialized healthcare plan, or more so, or universal, some component to it. I don't want to misrepresent you, but I know we differ on that. Yeah. However, the argument has always been made that, well, actually, we have worse healthcare. We're ranked 36. Well, we're ranked right next to Slovenia, and we are, who's ranked number 2? Italy. Spain is ranked number 7. So right now, that ranking system, which is based primarily on subjective polling, are you satisfied with your healthcare, from the World Health Organization, is no longer valid. The left can never point to it. Yep. The only other one they can point to is the Commonwealth study that involved 11 countries and had us ranked 11th and the UK number 1. How's that working out for them? So hopefully people are at least opening their eyes now, going, wait, hold on a second. Yeah, the CDC and FDA really were slow and mucked this up. And private industry, even the MyPillow rapist-looking guy, is stepping in to pick up their slack. Here's something I want to talk with you about, though, Tim, because you know this probably better than anybody, and I'm not just blowing smoke. The media bias and the algorithms, obviously, that happen across social media. A big one of these, obviously, was Laura Ingraham. She put out a tweet talking about chloroquine, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, touting it as a treatment, and not saying cure, by the way, talking about it as a treatment. There's a difference between a cure and therapeutics, and we've talked about that on this show. Notice that our videos were drastically throttled. They had no reach. This was removed from Twitter as misleading information. Now it's been approved by the FDA as emergency treatment. Is it just, and I know there's a little bit more nuance there, and I want you to describe it, but is there a worry here that the people who are inputting these algorithms, there's so much selection bias before the algorithms go out to, piranhize, that's a new verb, the news?
I think we're facing, we're going to see our civil liberties hit really, really hard because of this. To talk specifically about the Laura Ingraham thing, she said that there was a doctor in Lenox Hill that was using it, and I believe that was incorrect. I couldn't find anything to verify that. There had been several statements from a doctor in Lenox Hill that was touting the potential for it and previous studies.
From what I understand, he was a practicing physician who had something like admission privileges. In other words, he wasn't a full-time staff at Lenox Hill, but he did work at Lenox Hill in some capacity, yes.
So they win on a technically the truth.
Right.
Trump comes out and says hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin is very promising. Yes. He says it might work, it might not. I'm very hopeful. The media tears him apart, blames him for a guy, putting a spoonful of fish tank cleaner in his soda. Meanwhile, Andrew Cuomo says the same thing. They completely ignore it.
By the way, that wife killed that husband with the fish tank cleaner. She's the new Carol Baskin. We can get into that, but she's a huge Democratic. She's a huge Democratic donor, and was looking to try and divorce the guy. And then all of a sudden, he drank the fish tank cleaner, and she didn't. It's speculation, by the way. Don't label this fake news. But I'm doing a deep dive. I'm spiraling. When I get tired, I spiral. Tim, continue. Take the reins, or I'm going to mess this up.
What were we talking about? So the social media. That's right. I saw that post from James O'Keefe. Facebook took down his video where he was literally just filming going to New Rochelle to get a test.
Yeah.
This is the new normal. There's a progressive commentator, Kyle Kalinske. I think he's a good dude, and he tweeted that there's not going to be a back to normal. We're going to see a pre and post COVID thing, just like we did with 9/11.
Yeah.
And I think so. And we're seeing major corporations justify censoring people on social media like Laura Ingraham and the president of Brazil without question.
Yeah.
You know, they say we'll label it misleading. They don't care. Heads of state are gone. You know, high-profile pundits, you're gone if you don't say what they want you to say.
Yeah.
And what's scary is, what's the real criticism of James O'Keefe's going and filming what people think?
He looks
went
like
to
a
testing
young Matthew
site.
Modine.
That to me was insane, and to see like these
It is
journalists
uncanny.
cheering for it.
Yeah.
It's like he asked a frontline guy, like, how do you feel? I used to do that all the time when I would go down to like Egypt or Ukraine and cover stuff on the ground. I'd walk up to a guy and say, what's happening? How do you feel?
Right.
And that's journalism to them. But if it counters their narrative or goes against their machine, so what we're seeing now is
Can you hold that thought 1 second here? And I really appreciate you bringing that up. And yeah, I am familiar, I think, with Kyle Kalinske from. He was the one who didn't want to debate a long time ago when we were a much smaller channel.
That's right.
But hopefully, listen, I appreciate that. I think someone like him and I would disagree, but he's being straightforward about this. And hopefully, he never uses the World Health Organization's rankings again or that Commonwealth study. We'll see. Here's for those who are watching right now, everything's in front of the paywall because #MugClubQuarantine. This is the time where we would leave, go to break, and say, hey, go to Mug Club, go to the Blaze TV for Web Extended. But instead, right now, you get to see all of it. So, Indian color bars. And we're back here with Tim Pool. Okay, Tim, continue what you were talking about with the journalism.
So, well, where specifically were we? I got distracted.
I don't know. Here's what I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
By the way, she totally killed her husband with the fish tank lady.
That's right, James O'Keefe. We're talking about James.
James O'Keefe, yes.
Yeah. Essentially, we're seeing, for one, major corporations are justifying taking things down. Kara Swisher for the New York Times writes this op-ed saying Fox News is dangerous, campaign. And it's scary to me that there are people who will read this not realizing that it was the Washington Post, USA Today, and all these other news outlets that were saying the exact same thing.
Yeah.
A weird thing happened where, early on a lot of conservatives were in front of this. Tom Cotton especially, he's always been in front of this. And Fox News was. But then once the media latched onto it, it seems like there was this weird tribal thing that happened. The left didn't want to concede that the conservatives were right and beat him to calling this out because Tom Cotton was right.
Yeah.
Facebook was apparently taking down his statements in the Senate.
Let me give you a straighter path to an explanation here, okay? They're communists and communist sympathizers. And I only say this because they were no, think about this for a second. This sounds extreme. They were complicit in parroting the Chi-Com line, right, that we have it contained, it's taken care of, don't worry about it. So when that was what they were saying, the media went out and said, it's fine, don't worry about it, like you say from Washington Post. Then, when the Chinese government said, actually, we have it contained and it may have come from the American government and it's your fault, guess what? They parroted that same line. So if you want to look at consistency, they might as well be walking out with the Chinese Communist government's handbook.
Well, here's what's amazing. Twitter thinks it's unacceptable that Laura Ingraham put out a tweet about hydroxychloroquine, but they find it acceptable that a Chinese official tweeted several times that it was the U.S. military doing it.
Yeah, the foreign minister.
No one cares.
The foreign minister.
Exactly.
Yeah, and he was also, by the way, editing clips out of context where it was I don't have it in front of me, there was some kind of a Senate hearing, I don't remember, but they were interviewing doctors, and the doctor was saying that, yes, there were likely some coronavirus cases before March. And they were saying, see, it started in the United States and it was covered up by the military. It's the kind of thing they would have banned Alex Jones for a long time ago. Here's something else I'd like to ask you, because we noticed this in the first week. When the coronavirus, when the COVID, Wu flu, Chinese virus, whatever you want to call it, I don't care. Let's use everything that offends everybody here. We noticed that nothing we put up that related to coronavirus was getting any plays for the first week. I mean, about less than a tenth of every other video that we were uploading, in the months prior. And then all of a sudden, I think maybe last week, it was and people started saying notifications were back in. And did you see any of that with your channel?
No, well, I didn't cover this as it was rising throughout February because I was told straight up that I wouldn't just be suppressed. Like, when I tried talking about certain issues related to foreign policy, I got a hard notification that I was discussing. Like, I did a video about Trump's approval rating, and they called it terrorism related. And so I was told in no uncertain
terms. How is that? They also attributed. They also said that Change My Mind. Was it Change My Mind? Male privilege is a myth.
Yeah.
They said that was election meddling.
Right.
So yeah.
You know what I think?
So,
I think there's people who work there who try and they're either there's incompetence, there's malice, and then eventually I get these things overturned. But on my second channel, the Timcast News one, I had no problem talking about this other than I have a wall of confirmed demonetizations, and the views were I would say down like 15 or 20%.
Okay.
But I don't know how to describe it. I think people who go to my second channel I call it my second channel. You're not searching for specific information about it. So it doesn't matter if they hard suppress it to a certain degree.
Right.
My flagship channel, the main one where I do the one segment, I tried to do a video on it, and then I get a notification saying war, conflict, tragedy, terrorism.
Right.
And when that happens, I get maybe like 2 to 3% of normal viewership. So I had no choice. I'm like, there's no point in even uploading it. So I just take it down. I put up a different video. And
was that you did that with something coronavirus related? You had that notification?
Yep.
Okay, so maybe that could be it. And my inbox is just so flooded right now that I just didn't catch it. Where I was going like, oh my god. And you know what? Sorry, go ahead.
Do you have the self-certification thing on YouTube? It's just like
I don't self-certify. I'm married now.
Ah, yes. Well then, but no, there's a new program they launched, and maybe I'm just being callous, not real. I don't know if you guys got monetized back or whatever, but they want me to.
Fuck you, Tim Pool.
I'm trying to be
you hard.
Let me just.
No, we're not remonetized. Okay, you pulled it out of me.
Well, to be delicate, no. So I have this thing where they tell me I have to tell them what's in it. And so when I made a video about this here's the first. On January 23rd, I made a video about this because China was locking things down, and it was alarming. Not a partisan American politics thing. I thought it was important. And they said it was fine. They asked me, does it contain any of these things? Hate speech, firearms, booze, whatever. None of these things.
Yeah.
No war related, not terror related. They said, you're good to go. They manually review every video I do, no matter what, whether it's monetized or demonetized. A week later, they reversed that and gave me a flag, striking the video, confirming it demonetized and suppressing it for the next, I think, up until like a week, like 3 or 4 days ago.
Wow.
They finally agreed to overturn it.
Okay.
Because what they told me was, we've accepted the reality of the coronavirus. We're now going to let you talk about it. And I was like, wow, think about how many people could have been warned if you didn't suppress my content.
Yeah. Right, and this is a perfect example of the media wins on a technicality in getting Laura Ingram's tweet taken down, because the Lenox Hill doctor is not technically on retainer at Lenox Hill. He just has, I think, outpatient privileges. But we would say that maybe it would be a better win for the media if they actually educated the American public on a potential very efficient treatment that's been approved by the FDA. It's almost like that should be more important for the media to try and focus on.
This is what I love.
Yeah.
Here's what they do. What was it? March 19th, TechCrunch. Hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin shows promising results. Donald Trump comes out 2 days later. I heard the story. You hear this? It's amazing. Donald Trump lies, pushes conspiracy. It's like the media reports it. Andrew Cuomo, March 6th, masks are being stolen. Trump comes out a couple days ago. Maybe the masks are being stolen. Trump pushes conspiracies. It's like, you guys reported this first.
Right.
They report it. Trump repeats it. Then they call it a lie. I just don't understand how they they're not getting away with it anymore. The people are starting to see through this, and Trump's approval rating is going up.
Well, and I really appreciate genuinely people like you are out there who I don't believe you were a Trump voter, or certainly you aren't a Trump cultist. And the fact that you are actually out there being objective. When people talk about common ground, I always say, hey, listen, truth is more important than common ground. For example, you and I disagree on some issues, but we can find common ground as we do right now without actually having to agree. Final question I wanted to ask you about this because of the quarter Asian, which, by the way, you fool people beautifully. Like, you could go into an Abercrombie ad, just get yourself a spray tan and claim any ethnicity. It's wonderful.
Right. That's true, though. Yeah.
It is true. I don't have that.
No. I'll briefly mention, I was in Egypt, and the people there thought I was Egyptian.
Sure.
I go to Mexico, they think I'm Spanish. Like, I'm ambiguous. I can, like, sort of blend in anywhere.
And you could go in with white people, and they don't care. Like, it's Tim, as I was saying. So do you think that the FDA did the right thing in refusing the masks from China, knowing what we know now? Because that was another thing that was covered by the media as a huge
probably. I've been hearing stories that we get tons of goods from them that's contaminated with a ton of really nasty stuff that we have to reject all the time.
Right.
And I guess it's a tough call. If 10% work, is it worth taking them? I don't know. Probably not. They're trying to exploit the situation for economic gain. They've been lying to us, and it's about time we bring all the manufacturing back here. And when it comes to the idea of being objective, that's what people like to say. And I'm like you said, the truth is more important. Trump was right about China and manufacturing and all that. And if we had listened and moved much more quickly in the past few years, we wouldn't be strained for medical supplies. That's just a fact.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Mr. Poole, in closing, what would you want people to see as a silver lining in all of this? Like, where should they look to, or what do you think is hopeful in this scenario? Because a lot of people see it as looking bleak. I hate to point out positives in a bleak situation in certain circumstances, but it should be said,
that I think this will help make us stronger. I think we bring manufacturing back. We have better border security. We take very seriously the need for just community and working together and fighting together. We're now saying something incredible. We're deprioritizing the BS, in economics, like celebrities are being mocked and ridiculed by, across the board. Right. And doctors and nurses, truck drivers are being championed. These jobs that are actually important for all of us. So, what I've been saying is that a lot of these social justice fantasies, like people saying it's violence to call me a name, it's all now being erased when people realize it was only possible to say those things because you lived in a safety bubble. Right. Now that we have a real threat, all of that stuff is starting to disappear because it's not relevant and none of it was true in the first place. So that's a silver lining. Yeah. We'll get people back to responsibility and independence, individuality, I think, but also U.S. community. We got to bring our manufacturing back 100%.
Yeah, and I think another, I think that's a silver lining, and I think a very uncomfortable truth is that people are realizing that folks who many Americans thought had their best interests at heart genuinely don't. I hate that this is what has been required to wake up some folks, but I think you see it pretty clear with the stark contrast in the second Donald Trump is able to speak directly to the American people with his briefings, his approval ratings go up in record time, by the way, and so immediately the networks stop airing it. Yeah. To me, most people go, okay, you know what? I don't even like the guy, but he still is the president right now. And you guys said this is the worst pandemic of our lifetime. We should probably hear from the president and, of course, his cabinet and medical specialists who are up there.
Did you see that Rose Garden interaction where I think it was a CNN journalist says, you said I want to be appreciated and then not to call people, and Trump says, read the whole quote. I see this stuff all the time. I'm used to it, but I was still shocked by what the actual quote was. Right. Trump saying, I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the administration and the people working hard. I'm like, yes, they should be. And the media cut that out.
And that's really hard for Trump to say, so it makes him even madder. Right. Him say, I'm not saying this about me. I'm talking about them and them and them. And then he's like, you still don't give me credit? Same exact thing we were talking about, where he said, it's amazing to me that we're throwing away these masks. We should have ways to sanitize. We have and this is where he sounds like a buffoon, fine liquids. What he means is we have a sanitization process, which we now know, by the way, could make up to 400,000 masks a day, reusable 20 times. Recycling. Yeah. This is something that should be championed by the fat lesbians at BuzzFeed on YouTube's homepage immediately. Recycling masks.
Listen. It's not conservative or liberal to point out that there's a potential treatment or masks can be reused. And this is what I think a lot of the tribalist left don't like about me, or why they'd accuse me of being conservative. It's like, hey, the American people really like what Donald Trump is doing and what he's saying. And they're like, well, only a Trump supporter would say good things about him. Well, no, if the polls are showing it. Donald Trump lied about mask theft. So I'm like, well, Andrew Cuomo said it too. It's not a conservative position to call out mask theft. No one's arguing policy in these stories. It's tribalism. To them, it's not about whether you agree with social policy or not. It's whether or not you're on my team.
Yes, but it is a liberal position for Cuomo to be governor with nipple barbells. So the channel is Tim Pool. There's Timcast and then Timcast News on the Twitter for as long as is allowable at Timcast. Hey, Tim Pool, thank you so much for being here, man. We always appreciate it. And stay safe. Wash your hands.
Will do. Likewise.
We're going to wrap this up.
Estoy seguro de que están esperando que hable de la gran selección de cafés que puedan encontrar cuando ordene por Black Rifle Coffee. Cada grano es dado de tu individual de mejores granos del mundo. Puedo hablar por horas como es esperando por veteranos y la casa que apoyan. Pero para mí son las cosas pequeñas de la vida, como mi jarro de mi medium roast y mi crack cocaína.
Go to blackriflecoffee.com/Crowder. Use promo code Crowder for 20% off your first purchase.
Hey, you know about Black Rifle Coffee, and hopefully you're drinking Black Rifle Coffee, but something else I want to let you know, they're doing a coffee donation campaign right now. Not only do they support this show, but they're helping support medical workers, first responders, emergency service workers, and they're actually doing kind of one of those buy a bag, give a bag. Because what do they need? Sure, they need masks, they need medical supplies, but if they're dropping over tired like a narcoleptic, they're not any good to anybody. So what they need is coffee. And, there's some companies out there that talk about what they do as far as causes, and it's a marketing gimmick. Black Rifle is veteran-owned and operated, and they give a certain percentage of their proceeds to veteran causes, but they've stepped up several times like this with disasters. So they put their money where their mouth is, and all that's great. It wouldn't mean a damn thing if the coffee wasn't better than the competition. So go to blackriflecoffee.com/Crowder, enter in the promo code Crowder, and you get 20% off your first purchase. And listen, you get to help some people who are out there doing the real work. This is me making fart jokes in a microphone. With Crowder Ranger Panties. Buy yours today at louderwithcrowdershop.com. That's called the drowning dance. Looking at the clock because I just don't care anymore. It's been a long week. Thank you, Tim Pool. You guys saw the web extended. Yeah. And, of course, a lot of these things are just, they're always behind the paywall for people who are not Mug Club members. That's why we're offering the promo
literally
code.
most of the time.
My headphones got loud all of a sudden. Okay, now I have them perfectly. And I really am great. Like, we were talking about this. If people are losing their jobs and $5 million for unemployment.
Yeah. It's pretty rough out there.
Like, having to up the workload really isn't all that much skin off my nose. But I looked at the clock, and I can't believe it's still today. It's one of those.
Yeah. Oh, technically. It's only April 2nd.
Thursday? It's not a Friday? It feels, I don't want to say it feels like a Friday. It feels like I wish it were a Friday. As much as, and the thing is, like, you guys get to, you get to watch and spend time with us, but I don't get to see you, right? So you watch and you feel, but we don't see you. I mean, right now you should put a sticky note on that, but I don't get to see all of you, and so it's just sort of like, we're doing twice the workload and just hoping it works. Like, I don't have any idea how many hours put in that yellow submarine. Maybe crap. We don't know. I have no idea. But we have a lot next week. I believe we have a bunch of guests. Of course, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we're doing Good Morning Mug Club live, where you can chat with us every morning, 10 a.m. Eastern. And then we have clips on YouTube every night if you're not interested in the $30 off quarantine code for Mug Club. But that is what will keep us afloat during and after this. As a matter of fact, unfortunately, some conservative organizations out there, you've probably been reading some of the news. They've been laying some people off. And I hope that bounces back, but that's because a lot of people are dependent on ad revenue out there right now. Yeah. And particularly with like Google AdSense or websites, the problem with that is a lot of those businesses are smaller businesses running ads, and they can't afford it. The first thing they cut off is advertising.
Extra stuff.
And we're primarily funded by viewers like you. You guys get this wonderful mug, and you don't have to support a foreign caliphate. So we will see you next week. It's going all month, Mug Club Quarantine. But, I wanted to talk about something. I just kind of touched on this with Tim Pool a little bit. And Tim Pool and I have talked off air, full disclosure. We're not part of some secret cabal. We just, every now and then, he's like, hey, did you hear this? I'm like, no, I didn't hear that. Did you hear this? He goes, no. And we say, okay, all right, I'll talk to you about it next week. That's about it. We're not wearing pointy hats. There are no owls involved, nothing like that. Yeah. No burning anything in effigy. But we disagree on a whole lot politically. And that's when like he's not one of those guys who's really conservative but trying to claim that he's still liberal. He's really not a conservative, which I appreciate. And here's the thing, we find common ground. And I was wondering, why, when people talk about the political division, they're not really complaining about political division, because that has existed always, pretty much, right? You can go back and watch films from the 50s, 60s, 70s where they say, oh, Republican, Democrat, they kind of rib each other, right? People have divided along ideological lines since the beginning of time. And in the United States, Republican, Democrat, since we have a two-party system, that's kind of an important way because you're signing on to a platform. That being said, you can find common ground, right? Without meeting in the middle. That's something that I think people get wrong. It doesn't mean that, we're going to compromise and meet in the middle. No. You can be a conservative, a hardline conservative, and you can be a far left liberal, and you find common ground without agreeing on anything political. And what does that mean when we're talking about common ground? It's because really what you're finding common ground with should be principles or moral through lines that we share. In other words, the idea of freedom over the individual, freedom of the individual, over the collective, or the idea that, for example, families will look out for themselves before they look out for some foreign country or entity, or the idea that a country that allows people to be free and ended slavery, that's a better thing than a country that still employs slavery, because not all moral outlooks on the world are equivalent. These are moral through lines that Democrats and Republicans at one point shared, even though they disagreed wildly on tax policy, foreign policy, and even abortion. Why is it so hard to do right now? Here's why. Because the basis of finding common ground, and it can be the only basis, it has to be founded on truth. You have to come to some kind of agreement as to what the truth is. And that's not what's happening right now. That's why you have a media that refuses to run press conferences and then cherry pick information from those press conferences and then present it. This is amazing. I was reading it this morning. I was reading a story. I don't remember where it was. And I'm going, hold on a second. They're saying that Donald Trump is running press conferences to try and downplay coronavirus. And then they cite the 100 to 200,000 deaths from Berks. And they got that number from the press conference when Donald Trump said, okay, doctor, you want to go ahead and tell them? And then they go, Donald Trump doesn't want to acknowledge this. Well, hold on a second. That's why they don't want to run these. Because they don't want us to find common ground on truth. There's a silver lining in this right now. There should be a silver lining that we could come together like we did after 9/11, right? All Americans, hand in hand, not we are the world, but we are America against an invisible enemy. And you know what? When that happens, when you're going to war, and I've heard people describe this as a war against an invisible adversary, when you're going into battle, you do need to recognize the victories. That matters. You've heard of the term morale? That's important. It's important for a leader. And obviously Donald Trump is a president and a leader, and that's why he's tried to focus on that. And gosh, that's horrible. We should shame the president for saying anything positive. But you know who else was in a position of leadership? It's not just the president. It's not just Washington, D.C. I've said this before. If you were to take the power of Washington, D.C. over the power of Hollywood and the media, you need a CAT scan. They're in a position of leadership. They don't want to talk about any of the victories. Recyclable masks, hundreds of thousands. 5-minute test, 2-minute test, at-home test. Therapies. Some places over 90% efficacy rate. None of it. And here's why. We're trying to find a silver lining right now. When we talk about common ground, here's why we can't find common ground. And we don't need to budge on this. We, meaning Americans, and I mean even Bernie voters, Americans who actually believe in the idea and concept of the United States of America. And you know what? Let's take it one step further. Let's say you don't believe that the United States is the greatest country, even that good of a country. You don't want to see it go away. You just want to see Americans survive. You just want Americans to have hope. Well, guess what? We can all find a silver lining there together in common ground, in the idea that we're making progress, and the idea that the mortality rates are going down as we increase testing, as we increase efficiency of testing, as we hopefully have more private industry step up, as we're able to use more masks, as we're able to sanitize more masks. We can find common ground on that because there's common ground on a silver lining, which is the truth. But here's the thing. If the silver lining is a lie, it's meaningless. And unfortunately, right now, the silver lining that we have in the media, who should be looking out for the best interest of the American public, Right? That is their job. The idea of just the facts, that's a slogan from CNN, just the facts. Well, just the facts would mean that you're looking out for the best interest of the American public, that you want them to be able to make an informed decision. But the truth is, the silver lining that they are looking for right now is a way to blame it on Republicans and the president after Russia and an impeachment didn't work. And after parroting the communist Chinese government line verbatim didn't work. So the silver lining that we're looking for as Americans is, how are we going to come out of this? How severe is it? What kind of risk factor are we looking at? What do we need to do with mom and dad and grandpa and grandma? Oh, we're looking for a silver lining. Well, that's good news. Okay, here's some productive measures that we can take at that exact same time. The people we can't find common ground with, those in charge of the media entertainment industrial complex, are going, where's the silver lining here? How do we blame Republicans and Trump and Christians? And guess what? We don't need to find common ground with those folks. What we need to do is focus on finding common ground in the truth. Otherwise, the silver lining means nothing because it's a lie. I don't have anything productive to offer you as far as advice. Read the news, fact check, say your prayers, and set a guard. But there's a lot of good happening out there right now, and you're not going to hear of it if you're tuning into the main networks. That's why we're here doubling the content for Mug Club Quarantine, and we're giving you a promo code $30 off. Join if you want to support it. If you don't, watch for free. We appreciate you being there. We hope that someday you do support us so we can be here for years to come finding silver linings. See you next week. Not next week. See you tomorrow morning. Oh, God, it's still today. And we have a tomorrow. There's a tomorrow? It only takes a time.
Planet.